Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. This video, we're going to be taking a look at some more solo RPG things. Scattered across my table right now are some things that I'm using to kind of play and develop a little solo RPG right now. And it's been a lot of fun, and I've got some new tools and some new things that I am experimenting with, and kind of experimenting with some new ideas and trying to develop one idea. And I'm hoping maybe one of you can help me because I can't quite figure out how to do it. But let's zoom in here and take a look at some new things that I have received, and then we'll talk a little bit about what I am playing right now. One new deck of cards that I have received is this Deck of Stories Genesis box. And this says it's a deck of stories. The Genesis box contains the Deck of Stories Volume 1, NPC boosters 1 and 2, and several bonus NPC cards, and 18 sensory cards exclusive to the Genesis box. So what this is basically a deck of cards that has a bunch of NPCs and a bunch of different ways to kind of generate stories using this deck of cards here, the Deck of Stories. And the Deck of Stories is organized by letters, and the letters spell the word orc. And the story cards that coincide with O kind of represent beginnings of stories. And then story cards that have a bold R are kind of like the middle of the story. And then C's would represent the conclusion. Of course, that's not a hard and fast rule, but it does just give you kind of an idea of where this certain story card should be played. So let's say that you were to draw this card here. It is an O, so this could be the beginning of a scenario. And it says you are hired to mediate a trade dispute. Decades of bad blood have led to a standstill. Okay, so you could play something like that. Then it gives you some ideas for some next steps in this particular scenario. You could say, what are they fighting over? Is the fighting a delay tactic? And then maybe you role play that a little bit and you want to go to the next story. So you would draw something that has an R on it. So then you could have this R. And then so maybe you've discovered that a merchant discovers a cheap way to make healing potions. They have strange side effects. Okay, well, maybe those two are related somehow. Next steps. What kind of side effects? How does the party discover them? And then finally, you might come to a C, which you would draw a C. And this would say a volcanic explosion threatens to destroy a small settlement. You must evacuate the villagers. Well, maybe this merchant, maybe one of his strange potions had some kind of effect on the volcanic activity of a mountain or something like that. So it's just some quick little ideas that you can use to generate some stories. It's not specifically made for solo RPGs, but I think you could easily make it work. And then you also have a small deck of cards here, which is your sensory deck. And these are just different ways to kind of use your senses as a player. It'll give you a different sense, a different kind of sight, sound, smell, or taste, maybe. I don't know if that's in here, but different ways that you can use to develop and to just make the scenario a little more interesting, I guess you could say. So this would say like sensory, all metals begin to quiver and rust. Okay, so some kind of little monkey wrench that you can throw into an adventure there, or ominous tension fills the air. Or the food tastes odd. There is taste to only one team member. So just some cool little things like that. Maybe something that just add a little bit of spice to a scenario. I could see these being pretty useful when you are maybe you're stuck in how something is going to progress, or you're stuck in a certain scene. Maybe you've developed a scene that just doesn't quite have the pizzazz that you want it to. So you could use one of those. And then finally, in this little box here, we do have some NPCs, and there are quite a few of them. Each of the NPCs will have a different picture, and then the NPCs will tell you a little bit on the back about that character. So this is Gamut, a half angel. It'll tell you about their personality, a quirk, a flaw, a goal, and a secret. So this is just a really nice deck of different NPCs that you could add to just about any kind of fantasy themed game to quickly come up with something to give you a little bit of a story arc or a story catalyst, something to spur on an adventure. So I'm looking forward to using these in some way. I do feel like this deck, this box of cards, was a little expensive, I think, for what you get. And I'm not exactly sure how useful it is because I have not used it yet. I just got it. But I am interested in checking it out and seeing if I can make it work somehow. A couple other new little decks of cards that I received and purchased from, I've got mostly everything here from Amazon, and these are 2 decks of cards used for Steve Jackson's The Fantasy Trip. And these are outdoor encounter cards and labyrinth encounter cards. And these are super cool. As you can tell from the titles of these cards, these are for use in kind of like an overland adventure. And then these would be used for when you're in a dungeon. And they are basically just decks of encounters that you can have. And they are pretty much game agnostic or system agnostic. So you can use them in just about anything. So here we have the deck of the outdoor encounters. I love the art on here. Very, very cool art with all of the line drawings. And each one of these cards does have some unique art on it. And I think these are really, really cool. I am super, super happy with this deck. And you might discover things here like a dead fortress. The abandoned fortress in the Wastelands doesn't look quite so abandoned when you get close enough to see the unmoving sentinels. There's a whole undead army here, far more than you can possibly handle yourself. What do? Or maybe you find a skeletal scout or a wicked hag, a quiet encampment. Ancient ruins, always fun to discover some ancient ruins. Friendly locale, altar of skulls, or a dead island, a dark grave. So all kinds of really cool things to discover in your overland travels. You can easily have just, you're out doing a hex crawl. You come up, you roll for your you roll for your encounter, you draw one of these. And this could be an entire adventure just in one card. So super cool. The labyrinth encounters are also pretty neat, but I am a little disappointed in them in that they don't have any unique art on any of the cards. So right there, just comparing the two, I greatly prefer the outdoor encounters. But the encounters on here can be pretty interesting, such as you might encounter a withered man. The body of a lightly armored man lies on the ground, face down. The deceptive smell of perfume almost covers the stink of rotting meat. His exposed skin is furred in a light shade of green. It's not fur. Even touching the corpse without precaution requires... So I guess they're not really system agnostic because they do have some rules for Fantasy Trip, and I don't have Fantasy Trip, but you could easily modify the rules to fit in any game. I guess that's what I should have said, because there aren't a ton of different stats and stuff. So you just kind of have to use some common sense to make some of these work within your game. Maybe you discover a way into the sewers. The stench is unmistakable. A sewer lies beyond the gateways ahead. Depending on where the NPCs are, a sewer connection may be completely natural or strange and mysterious. Is this part of the original system, or was this tunnel to the system constructed for some other means? Or has a magic gate been added? A gated drain, going through the motions, a ring of power, fermented fungi. So again, all kinds of pretty interesting encounters, very easy to incorporate in any kind of fantasy-themed solo RPG. So I have been using these and they have been quite useful. Something else I did just pick up is Wanderings, a Gothic roll and read table. And this is from Deborah at Geek Gamers. And of course, fans of solo RPGs, everybody knows who Deborah and Geek Gamers is. Very popular YouTube channel that she really does kind of focus on these kinds of things. And this is a little table, a book of a large table that she made. That if you remember in one of her very earliest kind of solo RPG videos, she took a book and she rolled some dice to determine a page number in that book. She turned to that book and read the passage that was on those pages, and then kind of developed a scenario and adventure from those pages. And that was a very popular video that she did. And she kind of took that and developed it a little bit more, where she took a whole bunch of different old Victorian kind of mystery, supernatural books. Most of these, I believe all of them, are in the public domain. Things from writers such as A.G. Wells, Charles Dickens, J. Sheridan Le Fanu, William Hope Hodgson, Charles Brockett Brown. Just all kinds of interesting authors. A few I've read, like Hodgson and Wells and Le Fanu. A few I have not read, but all kinds of really cool old authors. And she looked for interesting passages in the books that she used, and then made a D88 table that you could roll. So you would roll two D8s. So you could roll 62, and then you could turn to passage 62 here. So let's see where 62 is from. 62 is from H.P. Lovecraft's Cool Air. Okay, and then you could read passage 62, and this might help you to come up with some kind of scenario for your solo game. Black terror, however, had preceded me. The house was in utter turmoil, and above the chatter of odd voices, I heard a man praying in a deep basso. So I don't find the passages in Wanderings very useful to the kinds of games, the kinds of themes that I'm interested in role playing, which are basic kind of fantasy themes. Deborah's really kind of into that kind of like more Victorian, more like drama style to her games that she plays. But I did really want to pick this book up just to support her, because of I love her and her channel, and the information that she presents is always so good. And I could see this little book becoming quite useful to people who want to play the kinds of games that she likes to play. So that is Wanderings, a Gothic roll and read table. And then I think finally for the new stuff is the newer book from Madeline Hale. Of course, Madeline Hale, the two most ubiquitous books in the toolbox of the solo role player, and those are Table Fables 1 and Table Fables 2. These books are indispensable. Tons of people, including myself, have talked just nonstop about these two books. And then her newest book is called Arcane Artifacts and Curious Curios. And as you can see, it is absolutely massive, especially when compared to the Table Fables. I mean, this thing is, I was shocked by how huge this is. And this is a book of really crazy, unique, and weird and wild magical artifacts. And it is a giant kind of D100 D100 table that you are going to roll on, to where you can find different kinds of magical jewelry, clothing, armor, weapons, books, journals, scrolls, potions, food and drink, tools, equipment, and household objects, containers, trinkets, and knickknacks, miscellaneous. So just all kinds of things. And each one of those subcategories is going to have their own D100 chart that you would roll. You can have an item condition. You can add an item side effect. So let's say you wanted to have some kind of magical weapon. You could go to 131, page 131. And then you could just roll a D100, or you could zero in on swords or axes or specific types of weapons, and you could roll a D120 or D20. But let's say we just wanted a random weapon for 100. We would get 5. Okay, so we would turn to 5 here. 305, which is a weapon. 5, it's a soul blade. So then we could read a little bit about our soul blade. A silver blade with a golden pommel wrapped in red silk. A large ruby is set in the hilt, and it glimmers and shifts as if filled with mist. Runes of spiritual binding are marked on the blade. Enchantment. When a creature is killed, the soul is transferred into the gem in the hilt of the sword. Oh my god, we found a Soul Stealer. This totally works with our Elric series that we're working on right now, or Stormbringer, I should say. Soul Stealer. Stormbringer. Let's see. The user can communicate basic information with the soul if the soul is willing. The souls of certain creatures can also give the blades certain bonuses at the game master's discretion. So you get some power and you get a little bit of history, but there are just all kinds of awesome magical things in this book with just different effects, different histories, different little details. So really cool. Another just awesome tool to add to your arsenal as a solo role player. Really happy to have that. So right now with my game that I am playing, I am once again playing a game using Scarlet Heroes as my base rules. And I kind of wanted to make a quicker playing game, or I should say a quicker playing adventure wrapping around the rules for Scarlet Heroes. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to create a character. So I created a human fighter here named Paldron Amtar. And there are his stats there. I rolled up some pretty good stats: a strength of 17, dex of 17, con of 16, intelligence and wisdom of 12, and a charisma of 14. He has a long sword, and his traits are he's a monster hunter, a rugged explorer, and a frugal survivor. And he also has a shield. But I wanted to take him on a quest for 5 magical items. And I used the magical item generation tables from Scarlet Heroes to make up my first one. And that was a +1 Dagger of the Ancient Sun. And so I wanted to play an adventure where I was after 5 different treasures, and using table fables, I created this name of this cult, the Slaves of the Sunless Eye, and I'm trying to track down 5 treasures. So the first one I am going after was this +1 Dagger of the Ancient Sun. And then I drew a dungeon from the side quest dungeon deck to kind of give me an idea of where that dagger is. And it was at the end of this dungeon here. I'm not really using any of the descriptive text on this dungeon because I want to explore it as kind of a new place. But I did go ahead and roll in Scarlet Heroes for the adventure tags. And the adventure tags that I rolled for that dungeon is newly discovered. And that says that I love these adventure tags. These adventure tags are really kind of super useful in crafting a solo game and giving your solo game a setting and populating that setting with interesting inhabitants and things. So this is newly discovered. So this dungeon that this dagger is in is the ruin has been sealed for centuries or otherwise lost from memory of men for a long period of time. So that totally works out with this ancient dagger that I'm trying to find. And then it says that it may be that the hero is the first to have discovered it in an age. Its inhabitants are likely either undead or somehow long-lived, secretive survivors of the original folk. And now this gives me an idea of some of the enemies that I might find here. Paranoid ruined chieftain, perhaps a greedy latecomer adventurer, a long-buried evil power, or a guardian who wants it to stay lost. Some of the friends, some of the allies that I might discover on this adventure could be curious ruin inhabitant or an explorer with an heirloom map, perhaps a trapped fellow adventurer, or a long-shackled, unquiet ghost. Some things we might discover here are maybe a key to buried evil, a relic describing the truth of the ruin, a map to a vault of a former age, or a codex of lost wisdom. Perhaps some of the complications are the site is easy to enter but near impossible to escape. The ruin's location is infested by dangerous foes. Another group races to find the ruin and unlock its secrets, and the inhabitants are convinced it is death for it to be discovered. Some places that we might come across on this adventure: untouched treasure chamber, structure of ancient architectural style, a dusty furnished room, or unmarred dust on the floors. So I kind of made this first quest for the dagger I put on a card. I was thinking of putting all of my rules and all of my things on cards. So then after I'm done with this adventure, I could have a deck of cards with all of the things on it, all of the places, people, and things that I'm questing for and adventuring for and finding. And that way I kind of have a game in a deck of cards that I could actually turn to maybe run another character through, something I could reuse. So I've been enjoying kind of working on this idea here. So quest 1, I randomly rolled for the threat level to be 4. I marked down the map was number 15 for this. I randomly rolled how many days away this particular dungeon is from where I am starting, and it was 5 days away. I randomly rolled a terrain that I have to travel through the forest to find it, so that could help me determine what kind of overland encounters I was going to have. There is my adventure tags, newly discovered. And then one thing in the adventure tags that did pique my interest was that another group races to find the ruin and unlock its secrets. So I thought that during this adventure, for these 5 different artifacts, these 5 different treasures, that each one could be a race to that treasure against a rival treasure hunter. And so I rolled up a really quick kind of NPC here, a rival hunter. Her name is Jade Rumi. She's female, dwarf fighter. She has these traits: guardsman and forest hermit. And then I rolled up some stats for her. But I can't quite think of a system to use to keep track of this rival hunter also racing for this dagger in a way that is just kind of like a track, kind of like some kind of threat track, something to pay attention to, where maybe Jade Rumi will actually get to that dagger before I do. I'm not quite sure how to simulate that, because what I'm trying to do in this game is keep things really quick and easy and also have some exciting moments. So I was thinking of some kind of race track where she could be moving towards the dagger while I am, but I wouldn't have to do a whole bunch of bookkeeping or dice rolling to determine where she is in relationship to where I am. So if you guys have any ideas of how to handle this kind of race to an item, to the MacGuffin, let me know. And so what I'm doing is I'm using a modified version of the travel rules that I came up with in my original Cymbeline Isle solo RPG. And I'm using the Overland Travel Pixel Loot cards to simulate my travel. Each day, I'm traveling 5 days through the forest to this dungeon. And each day I draw one of these Overland Travel cards, and I see how long of a journey it took me. Anything over 12 hours, I have an encounter. Anything under 12 hours, I don't have to use rations. And then I can also spend the rest of that day either hunting or gathering water. I'm trying to develop some rules, some very light kind of survival rules. Nothing quite as complex as maybe Forbidden Lands or something like that, but just a way to make the travel time a little more dangerous and a little more where I kind of have to think about hunting for food or scavenging for water. And then I'm decided that this world that I'm going through has very unpredictable and wild weather, because I kind of want to experiment with different kinds of weather effects. So I made up this little chart here where I have all these different weather. I have clear, downpour, light rain, strong headwind, strong tailwind, very cold, very hot, and foggy. And each day I'm rolling a d8 to see what the weather is going to be like for that day's worth of travel. And then I'm kind of just on the fly coming up with a set of rules for that particular weather, such as strong tailwind. So it's easier to travel. So a -2 hours travel time, a 1 in 6 chance of being ambushed in a combat encounter. And it's harder to hunt because I have a tailwind. And so the wind would blow my scent towards whatever I am hunting. So it's harder to hunt. Very cold. I have to use multiple rations a day. It's more difficult hunting, and it takes longer to travel. All clear, rules as normal. Maybe a downpour. I can fill up my water pouches for free. I don't have to look for water. There's a 25% chance to be ambushed on a combat encounter because of the rain, or a 1 in 6 chance of a D6 rations being ruined by the rain. So something like that, just trying to think of different ways that the weather can affect me while I am having this kind of simulated travel. And I want it to be dangerous, but not too deadly, not too much bookkeeping and too many rules to crunch through. And then each day I am keeping track of what happens. So day 1, the weather was very cold. I found some ancient ruins that were snow covered. Perhaps they contained a clue to an ancient mystery. They did not. I didn't discover anything, so I stayed the night. Day 2, the weather was very hot. It was an uneventful day. I stopped and smelled the roses. If you remember in my Cymbeline Isle series, I have this chart of all of these questions. So on an uneventful day, I can stop to smell the roses, and I can roll on this D100 chart of certain types of questions to ask about my character, so I can learn a little bit about my character. So I rolled up, what memory do I want to forget? And the memory I want to forget was the time that I lost my father's best hunting bow. Day 3, it was a downpour. It was uneventful. I hunted, but I was ambushed by a beast, and it was a giant rat. So I killed the giant rats, had a fight, and I was able to scavenge some food from them. Day 4 was a strong tailwind. I had an outdoor encounter, so I drew a card from here, from the Fantasy Trip Outdoor Encounters deck. And I came across a group of kids who were playing a fantasy make-believe game. And I decided to kind of join in as an adventurer and perhaps ask them if they knew of any information, any rumors or ancient legends or lore about these caverns, and none of them did. And then finally on day 5, it was another strong tailwind. It was an uneventful day. And I stopped to smell the roses, and the question was, what deity does my character worship? And I don't have a name yet, but I'm going to say that this character worships the goddess of luck. And so now I am at the cavern, and now I will use the rules from Scarlet Heroes, the solo rules here, to explore that dungeon. And those rules are in the back here, where they have all of the rules you need for your solo role-playing sessions, for your urban adventures, or from your wilderness adventures, or from your dungeon adventures. And that's what I'm going to be playing now. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to do a little update. I still am experimenting, learning, and enjoying the process of experimenting with and learning more about solo role-playing. I absolutely still love Scarlet Heroes. I just think this system is so fun. It's so fast-paced, so easy to implement. It has just about everything you need. I am also using White Box for the bestiary. And I'm trying to thinking of a way to simulate a race with a rival treasure hunter. If anybody has any ideas, let me know. Just something really simple, really fast, but it does also have some swinginess and some luck. Something to simulate that the rival hunter may be facing challenges that they are struggling with. Maybe sometimes they're able to progress, but maybe sometimes they're held back by challenges, something like that. But anyways, yeah, I just wanted to do a quick update on the solo RP front. We will be sometime very soon jumping into Merkborg with the solo rules from that. So I'm really looking forward to that as well. So all right, guys, well, I hope you enjoyed this kind of weird scanner shot video, but we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.